Web Marketing That Works, episode 57.
Welcome to the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Come behind the scenes of real-life marketing experiments and listen in as amazing guests confess the truth about what really works. Now, here are your hosts, Adam Franklin and Toby Jenkins.
Hi there. My name is Toby Jenkins, and this is the Web Marketing That Works podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. This is the show for people who love marketing on the web, and today you'll be hearing my interview with special guest Mark Carnegie. So let me introduce you to Mark. He's one of Australia's most successful and highest profile venture capitalists and private equity investors. He's worked on Wall Street in London and back in Sydney with some of the best known figures in business, including the former chairman of the World Bank, James D. Wolfensohn. He's also a polymath, meaning he actively develops a really deep understanding of a broad variety of topics and skills, and he explains in the interview today exactly why he does that. So in the interview, we talk about what has and what hasn't worked in his business career. And there are a couple of really great take-home points for me. One is Mark's 3 specific criteria for investing in a business. Secondly, why he actively focuses on building a community around his business and actually in his industry as well, so greater than just his business. Why he believes that every business needs to become their own PR agency. And one of the things I found really interesting was that what he keeps pinned to his wall to prevent him forgetting about his failures. And as he admits, there have been plenty of them as well as successes. So I'd really encourage you to listen out also for his marketing philosophy that was inspired by Australia's best known advertising man, John Singleton. So this show is brought to you by our book, Web Marketing That Works, and specifically the bonus 33 free templates that go with it. You can download them from www.bluewiremedia.com.au/book. Let's get into it. Well, Mark, thanks so much for joining me today on the show. It's great to have you along. Thank you.
Well, fantastic to be here, Toby.
So, Mark, before we jump into sort of the business and marketing discussion, I guess, which I'm really excited to learn a lot more about, I'm interested to know what sort of gets you out of bed in the morning. What fires you up?
What I like is being engaged with interesting people, with energetic people, interesting business problems, interesting social problems, and the idea that a group of people can actually come up with a better decision than any individual can make on their own. So I really, really like working in high-performing teams. And the way that I've tended to do that over my career is essentially being in as a partner in what I'd call an attacker business, a small business trying to grow as opposed to a big business that's all the time getting attacked by other players.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, nice. Well, that ties together certainly some of the things that I've observed, I guess. You know, I've known you personally for a couple of years now. And so that sort of sets a really interesting tone for the whole discussion from here. So appreciate you sharing that. So first up, for those who don't know you, can you share a little bit about your business now?
Sure. So the business I run now is the biggest recipient of what is government IAF money, which is essentially a program that is put in place to help venture capital investors invest in Australian innovative companies. The story over a long period of time is this has been an area where investors have earned low returns, and so the government wanted to step in and try and support innovation and the development of a venture capital industry in Australia, and I was lucky enough to be awarded with my partners two of these IAF funds. So we do that, and then we have another business which is a mainstream development capital business where we manage investments that invest in later stage, already profitable mid-sized businesses that are looking to grow to 3, 4 and 5 times the size that they are when we make our original investment in them.
Okay, great. And so the name of the business is MH Carnegie & Co.
That's right.
Across those 3 sort of different areas, or the 2 different areas, sorry. And, any links and everything I'll make sure are in the notes for this show. But can you share us, so that's sort of what you're up to now. Can you share with us how you started off? Because I know you studied zoology at university and then you made a transition into business. So I'm intrigued to hear how that happened and kind of the growth and journey from there.
Well, as I always say, I knew I was going to be a very, very poor research scientist early on. And
why might that be?
Well, I met a guy called Andrew Gibbons, who's now professor of zoology at Matthew Flinders University. And it was just clear to me that I could work all the hours that God gave, and I still would be 15 yards short of this guy in a 100-meter zoology race. He was just so much better. He knew so much more. His instincts were better. His intuition, he just knew it. And I went on and did an honours year in the sort of vain hope that actually I was wrong, but just found out that the inspiration just did not come. I was, going to be a workman-like zoologist and never anything better than that. And so then I went to a guy called Michael Darling, who gave me a piece of advice, which he in turn had been given, which was, if you're going to go over to England and study, if you're going to be a lawyer, go and study anything but law. And if you're going to be anything but a lawyer, go over there and study law. So because I knew I was never going to be a lawyer, I went over to England and went to university and studied law, and then spent my summers interning at different places in the City of London first, and then for Jim Wolfenson on Wall Street. And it was
went on to be the chairman of the World Bank, right?
That's right, exactly.
Wow.
So that was a really, really special thing. Australia's most high-profile investment banker of the last century, a particularly capable guy, was running a boutique business, and he gave me a summer interning job in his venture capital group, and I realised that unlike zoology, I had a natural affinity with this stuff, and so I've been in the business in one form or other of finance, in one form or other ever since.
Wow. That's really interesting. And I mean, I've actually read some of James Wolfenson's biography, and he's got a fascinating background himself, but he must have been a really interesting guy to work with.
He was the best reader people I've ever seen. He sort of knew...
Read of people?
Yeah, he was able to read a room and read people incredibly well. And, in the end, the adding up in finance is not nuclear physics or quantum mechanics or anything like that. The numbers are relatively simple, whereas it's the human dimension of finance that's the complicated one. And Jim had very, very good reading of people.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, right. That's fascinating. And so from working with him then on Wall Street, what was the sort of transition then back to Australia?
So then I went and worked with Lloyd Williams doing the first big leveraged private equity pub buyout, which was a joint venture with Foster's over the Courage pub estate. I did that for a couple of years. Then I came back to Australia and was really looking to work out what to do, and had a consulting gig with Hellman and Friedman while they were trying to invest in John Fairfax Limited. At the same time, I met Eric Beecher and John Singleton. And for the next decade, really, those were the three key relationships I had. I ended up being a partner of Hellman and Friedman, the big West Coast private equity firm. I was chairman of John Singleton Advertising, and I was an investor in Tex Media, which was Eric Beecher and Di Gribble's media company. So I had a decade of doing that, and then at the end of that, I started Carnegie Wiley with John Wiley, who was a university friend of mine, and did that for 8 or 9 years. After 7, sold out to Lazard, and that's really the path to here.
Yeah, right. And was there sort of breaks between those phases, I guess?
No, the way that I'd describe it is and people would say, I've tried to be retired a week a month for the last decade rather than have those big breaks and sabbaticals. So, I'm trying to have the balance during my life rather than retired. I would like to continue to do this till I die. Warren Hellman, who was my greatest ever mentor, was working 3 weeks before he died. So I think that's a vastly better way to do it.
Yeah, right. And how old was he when he died?
77, which was sad because he was a fit guy and we were expecting another 10 to 15 years out of him. But I think he still would have been working if he was 95.
Oh, interesting. And so can you share any sort of aha moments in terms of, I guess, particularly your investment journey and learning that you can share?
I think Lloyd Williams used to say something, which is, in the end, it's sort of every day down the coal mine, and then someday you crack open a coal face and the diamond's there. So it's not a aha, eureka, etc. The one thing that I always say to people, which they hate me saying, is, reading is the key thing. Prodigious amounts of reading. What I always say is read the Buffett letters, especially the ones in the 80s and 70s. So start from the earliest and read forward. Don't read the most recent backwards. But what he wrote in the Buffett partnership letters and the Berkshire Hathaway early years, before it all got too politically correct, was the best investment education you can ever get. And if you can cope with that and enjoy it, then I regard the PhD in finance as being reading Charlie Munger's book, about mental models and the lattice work of how you think about things. And
what's the title of that one, Mark?
Hold on, I'll tell you. Where is it? It's called Poor Charlie's Almanac, and it's written by a guy called Kaufman, or he's edited. These are really Charlie speeches, but there's nothing to touch it, except everybody I give it to hates it and says it's too hard.
Bit of mental gymnastics, eh?
Yeah, no, it's a challenge. It is a challenge because his point is you have to rewire your head, and it's hard to do.
Right. Interesting. And so that actually leads me to another question which I was keen to ask as well, which is I know you as someone who reads extraordinarily widely and a lot. At what point did you realise that was going to be a key?
I just always did it out of habit, and then...
Was it something that was encouraged by your parents, or...?
Yeah, I always enjoyed it, etc. Dad was always reading a book as well. And then it was just when Charlie said, this is in the book, here's how this should all hang together, and here's why you should be reading and reaching for stuff, I was able to find some way to hang all of the uncoordinated thoughts that I had into some sort of structure. So that's the point at which it helped. But I've always loved it, and I think it's a hard work habit, but it's one of those things that snowballs. If you can get to the habit of doing it, the more you do it, the more you're going to enjoy it. The more you're going to do it, the more you're going to enjoy it. It's just a great part of life.
I love reading, and I have enormous amount of respect, I guess. I know how much you do as well, and I've really admired that about you. One of the things I'm interested in is there a routine that you follow in terms of making sure you get reading done in a day, or for that matter, routines generally in your day?
No, somebody said to me, in fact, my architect said, how do you read so much, when I was referring to a book by a woman called Jane Jacobs about the planning of cities. And he thought, hold on, why would you have read that and I haven't, when it's about architecture and urban planning? And I said, it's really simple. I just don't like people that much. So I don't have to talk about sport. I don't have to do things like that. It ends up giving me more time to read, Toby. So I'm a bit of a misanthrope. That's the problem.
Oh, well, it works in your favour, obviously. Yeah, interesting. No, that's great.
I think the other part you've got to say is also physical activity. In the end, keeping physically fit's a really important dimension to it as well.
Yeah, and I know that's one of the other things I've noticed in knowing you is that you have a diverse interest in terms of your activities too. The kayaking, yoga. You've got the paddle set up at home, all that sort of thing. Is that from that same sort of philosophy that reading diversely is good for you, so therefore keep the exercise diverse as well?
I think so. I tried a whole series of different things, and there's no doubt that yoga's woven itself into the pattern of what I do, but it's only one part, and then I need to do some aerobic stuff. At the moment, it's kayaking. I'm finding that really, really interesting. I think it's the benefit of doing something that I find incredibly hard and I'm not at all good at, and learning a new skill. That's a sort of added bonus in the kayaking, trying something that I haven't done before and I'm really, really struggling with.
And what other sort of sports/exercise have you experimented with in the past then?
Well, so I did a triathlon last year, the Byron Triathlon, which was really, really hard. And in the years prior to that, I'd done a ton of ocean swimming. And then, it's no secret that I'm a passionate fisherman, and so spent a lot of doing that. And that's more walking than anything else. So I'd call that recreational rather than sporting, mate. Sure.
I mean, yeah, you've explored. And diving as well?
Yeah, no, I love diving.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for sharing all that, Mark. Let's jump into the sort of business side of things, because I'm really interested. You've sort of spanned those multiple decades as you've just described, and the world has changed a lot since the web has come along. And I mean, one thing is that marketing means a lot of different things to different people. So I'm really interested in your view specifically on marketing, and then we can expand to a few other various bits and pieces.
So what I say is, in the end, I've learned an immense amount of this from Singo over the years. And, he always describes it as Barnum and Bailey. You've got to get people in a tent and then you've got to sell them something. But you've got to create theatre and entertainment to start. And I think a whole series of people, really want to bore their clients to death rather than entertain. So the first point is, hey, make it entertaining, make it enjoyable, engage people. You find so many people in the world who just regard selling as a sort of second-class activity compared to manufacturing or making or doing stuff like that. And the answer is, first, you've got to celebrate selling as being really, really important. And marketing is at least as important as the rest of the business. So, as my dad used to say, there's three things you can do: make the beans, sell the beans, or count the beans. And you need to, if you want a business that works well, selling the beans needs to be at least as important as the other two. And then your question, really what I'd say, Toby, is I still am not able to, hold a candle to you in terms of how to think about web marketing. So I don't think I'm going to help people by talking about that. I think the one thing that I would say to people is, if you're an entrepreneur with the incredible increase in the number of dispersion mediums for media and the cuts to the number of journalists that are around or of different sorts, you get a huge, huge gain out there in the world if you're prepared to be the story and are prepared to actually do the work of a journalist to make it easy for them. So PR has been a thing which you are able to get vastly more easily now than you ever were before. So my recommendation to people out there is focus on how do you actually become your own PR and PR firm, because there's massive amount of return on investment for doing that available out there in the world.
I would hugely agree with that. And I mean, one of the things that we recommend to people frequently is, if you don't know how to tell the story, then hire a journalist as your next hire.
And I think the other thing is a media trainer to actually train you, because a whole lot of people won't actually go and do it themselves, but they are the story. And so I think, we both share this huge, huge regard for Tim Ferriss, and, his blog's an immensely effective vehicle for talking about this stuff as well. He's really, really honest about what he's doing. He's been immensely effective at it. He's another way to go if you don't want to hire or you can't afford a media trainer for yourself.
Absolutely. And I mean, you have a big media profile yourself, Mark. So you've actively sort of developed that?
Yeah, I spent 10 years, Toby, saying, no, like so many people, that's for Singo, that's not for me, it doesn't help in my business, why do I bother? It was really when I got into business with John Wiley and saw how much he used the media investment banking that I realised that was just rubbish. That was just an excuse for me not being prepared to get up there and do it. It was just the wrong
yourself
thing.
Out there.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. And so, I mean, obviously it has big business benefits, but, I guess the flip side of that is that you do have to put yourself out there and people get to draw their conclusions about you in the process, right?
Yeah, but I mean, that's your choice, which is, my answer is entrepreneurs risk already. So
get out there as well.
The phrase in poker is being pot committed. It's like bizarre. You're committed. You're going to live or die on your business. And now, I'm not possibly going to go and do that allows people to know who I am and what my business does. Doesn't make sense to me. Sign a personal guarantee, lose your house if the business goes down, but not be prepared to go and sell and, do market.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. Can you share then, in terms of sort of the marketing or stories, or your business stories too as an investor, what has worked well for you, what hasn't? Is there anything you'd do differently next time, lessons that you've learned along the way?
In the end, fail fast and fail small, and find some way to realise that with the clock speed of the world moving so quickly, and with what they call the stochastics of economics changing so that smaller and smaller number of winners are bigger and bigger, and that's how the economy works, you've just got to be prepared to churn through stuff really, really quickly. And you need to acknowledge that you'll inevitably make mistakes, and tons of them, and that's just an inherent part of the business.
And how do you guys sort of put that into practice then on a day-to-day, or how do you put that into practice on a day-to-day basis?
I'm in a fortunate position where I've had a couple of successes over time, so the failures don't eat away at me so much. I think it's far harder when you're still trying to, early on in your career, you haven't had enough successes to know that you're going to be good. It makes it hard. I just know there's going to be a runabout. Sometimes you're going to have some wins. Overall, you're going to be ahead of the curve if you concentrate and work hard. I can't give people better advice other than, believe in yourself, fail fast, fail small, try stuff again. You'll learn huge amounts by doing that. Don't sit there and continue to try and do something which is clearly not working.
Yep, that's excellent advice there. Thanks, Mark. And in your career, have there been any sort of results, marketing or investment-wise, that have been the most surprising for you? Things that you just really didn't expect?
There aren't any things that are sort of wildly out of whack. The thing that's surprising is when you're in a losing investment, the things you got wrong are 10 times as many things as you could have conceived of. They are, as somebody describes, the gift that keeps on giving. So it feels, I'm sure you've done it when you're surfing and you get dumped, that feeling like it goes on forever. So just reliving the experiences of a whole lot of failures and thinking about how long it went on and how many things went wrong. But overall, it hasn't been one of those, suddenly Jed Clampett, I was shooting, the Beverly Hillbillies, I shot at a rabbit and ended up getting a whole lot of oil. It just wasn't like that. It was lots of hard work over a long period of time.
Oh, that's a great analogy. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And so, if you were starting from scratch, say you had to start your fund from scratch, would there be a particular marketing tactic that you feel that you would follow to kick it off? Perhaps, without the connections that you have as well, we'll take those away.
I just don't think you want to be in the funds management business as a startup guy now. I think that has come and gone. I think you want to find some other, I think your area in digital marketing, digital whatever, we watch some of the businesses we've got that are up and going there. You can get to scale really, really quickly, having found a niche of a niche. I just feel like that's a better place to be if you're starting out at the moment, or being an actual hands-on entrepreneur. Grab a business and sweat it. The finance stuff, it's come and gone. For a young guy, it's a hard place to start.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so if we can jump into investing in a bit more detail, because you had a very distinguished investing career, and I'd be really interested to know, what sort of key criteria you look for when you're looking at investments. You must see stacks of investments each day or opportunities to invest. What sort of criteria do you use to filter those?
Quality of people, business model, architecture, and price. So in that order.
Right.
I want to be in business. With people I want to be in business with. I want them to have a mathematically winning proposition. I'm tough on price.
That makes sense. So at the quality of people, is it, for you, is that a gut feeling? How do you go about testing the quality of a person if you've just met them?
I think, just ask them about their business and hear what they talk, how honest they are about the challenges, etc.
And do you sort of make those judgments in one meeting, or what's your process for that?
Yeah, no, I've tended to get shorter and shorter about it. I just can very quickly work out whether I've got a rapport with somebody now or not. Yep. So yes, it's got shorter and shorter.
And are there red flags, regardless of across those three criteria, are there red flags where you just go, no, that's an absolute?
In all cases, for sure.
Yeah. And can you give us an example of what one of those might be?
Well, the valuation one's a really, really simple thing, which is I don't understand how the valuation of business go down as the profits go up. If you've got nothing but a business plan or an idea, that is somehow worth more than a business that makes $1 million a year. So a huge amount of our venture capital stuff just never gets to anywhere because people are saying it's worth more when it's just an idea than it will be in 3 years' time when it's making profits.
Yeah, right.
So
that makes a ton of sense.
And then on the business model architecture, there's just things where people are saying, plastics will be big. I want to be in the plastics business. But it's like, how do you have competitive advantage? How do you sustain that? How does the network of the relationships serve to reinforce competitive advantage? And then people, it's just down to the quality of them.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. And I mean, to your point about the idea versus the profitability, what's your take on something like, Facebook buying WhatsApp for $19 billion?
In the end, the way that I think about that is you're playing in the dinosaur game there, just huge beasts that roam the earth. Sure. And so the dynamic between Google, Facebook, Apple, the number of those network businesses is vanishingly small. And Zuckerberg, did that deal with Instagram and everyone was like, that's ridiculous, $1 billion for that. And it looks like it's an absolute steal. So too, you look at YouTube or DoubleClick, some of the acquisitions Google made, which were, absolutely inconceivable on any sort of valuation matrix, except when it was linked with something else. And the question that I'm trying to work out is, hey, if you're really the one platform, if you're fighting for the one platform, the one way into the internet and to connect, is having the telecommunications thing to have it stapled to your social media important? I mean, I think you've got a better view about whether that's going to work than me, mate. All I know is every one of those deals looked nuts to me, and they've all proved to be absolute steals in retrospect. This one is obviously the most expensive, but
yep. Okay.
You've got one of the 5 surviving global telecoms businesses as a result of WhatsApp.
Yeah, and I guess that's sort of what Nassim Taleb talks about in terms of the graveyard of the historical graveyard that no one sees as well, right? In terms of all the businesses that never see the light of day.
Well, I've got 100 share certificates on my wall from all sorts of businesses that came and went, It serves to remember.
Oh, that's a bit of stick in the office as opposed to all carrot.
Reax, Westmax, all sorts of things. Gwalia Proprietary.
Wow.
The Golden Horseshoe Company. Nobody remembers any of that. Bagwash Laundry Services Limited.
Wow. R.I.P.
Exactly.
So, Mark, one of the things that I have, again, observed about you and ties back to what you were saying about, why you get out of bed each morning and what excites you is that you've had an incredible ability, I think, to foster a community, both personally and professionally, and in fact, melding the two from everything from, the fundraising dinners that you have at your house to the Carnegie's Den. Is that something that you've always done?
No, really that was the whole point about venture capital, which is it needed clustering here in Australia. And so it was about trying to create the clustering effect, getting everybody together to talk. So it was purely what I felt was needed to do amongst the innovation community. Now, it's turned out lots of other people have tried to do it and done it at least as effectively, if not more effectively than me. So I feel like, hey, I've been part of a movement. Now everyone's talking to each other. The connections are working. The innovation's beginning to work. Now it's going to be this question about how many of these companies get through to, an A and a B round and some success, and we'll see how it is. I feel like the first leg of it, which is there enough stuff getting into the top of the hopper at the moment to have some real innovation out the bottom? Yeah, I believe there is now. And the networking was really
ideas and people
talking to each other, getting stuff done. Yeah.
Yeah, and connecting sort of investors and startups and all that sort of thing.
Exactly. And also, Tobe, I'm going to have to hop in a couple of minutes.
Oh, sure. No worries. Okay. There's a bunch of other stuff that I'd love to ask you, about your social conscience in Australia.
I'm happy to do another one another time. I'm sorry, mate.
No, not a problem at all. No, I really appreciate it. So what I'll do, I'll just jump to the questions just to wrap up. One is, do you have a favourite quote or piece of advice that you use for inspiration?
I have two. I have the Herbert Hoover "Nothing will replace persistence" quote, which you can look up on the web. And the other one is the Puggy Pearson, which is on the wall. And it says, "Ain't only three things to gambling: knowing the 60-40 end of the proposition, money management, and knowing yourself. Even a donkey knows that." And that was employed by a number of very, very successful investors. That's what you need to know, which is know the 60-40 end of a proposition, money management, and self-knowledge. Those are the three things you need to be a successful investor.
That's a cracker. I'll definitely post that one. Can you share something then that has become more important to you over time?
I think the wisdom of crowds has become far more important. Understanding that group intelligence is far bigger than individual intelligence. That's been a huge, huge change and a shift for me.
Cool. And I mean, Wisdom of the Crowds is that classic book that actually I think I got a copy from you from. But has there been another book that has sort of changed your worldview?
There's a book by N.A.M. Roger called The Command of the Ocean, which is the middle volume of his 3-volume history of the British Navy, which was a fascinating book about thinking about the rise of the British Empire. I think Guns, Germs and Steel's a phenomenal book and changed the framework of thinking about things. I think Kenneth Clark's Barbarossa is unbelievable. I think, the 4 key Shakespeare tragedies is really, really important. And the book that I find myself coming back to more and more is the Iliad. It's a real hard struggle, and you've got to read textbooks around it and stuff like that. But if you had to give me one that is really consuming me at the moment, the Iliad. I'm reading Loeb's interpretation at the moment. It's a big deal, and the amount of wisdom in that book is extraordinary.
Wow. Okay, that's a cracker. I'll put that on my Christmas reading list.
No, absolutely. So I'll give you the backstory book to it that you need to read to get into it, Tobes, because it's a proper struggle.
Wow. Okay. Fantastic. Well, 2 more questions then, Mark. Who do you learn from?
I learn from everybody now. Every single business that comes to see me, I try and learn something from them. I try and take something out of every meeting. I try and sit there and think, how's this guy thought this through? Why does he think this? Because the truth of the matter is I turned down a whole lot of really, really good investments. And so it's every guy who comes to pitch believes in a dream. He could be right. I would never have known some guy trading Beanie Babies and Fez dispensers was going to build eBay. I wouldn't have believed that 2 guys who were, mathematicians were going to be able to blast past Yahoo and become Google. Some guy trying to get laid in a Harvard dorm room was going to blast Rupert Murdoch space and have it become Facebook. I mean, it's like, just don't get too confident in my business, mate.
Yeah, taking a beginner's mindset. And okay, well, thank you so much for sharing all that, Mark. How can people sort of connect with you and find out more?
I think just go to the website, MH Carnegie.
mhcarnegieandco.com. Anyway, I'll put that in the notes as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Toby.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Cheers.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye. So that wraps up the interview with Mark Carnegie. Thank you so much for joining us today. This show is brought to you by our 33 free web marketing templates. You can download them at bluewiremedia.com.au/book. Now, our intent is to deliver actionable advice, so please let us know your feedback. If you have any questions or even guest suggestions, we would love to hear those as well. You can contact me on email. I am toby.jenkins@bluewiremedia.com.au, or you can find me on Twitter. I am at Toby_Jenkins. If you enjoyed the show, we would love you to leave a review on iTunes. It really helps us to secure these guests. So until next time, thank you very much.